Hello, it's Adam in the studio.
And it's Chris in the studio.
Now, basically, Chris, our whole careers as political journalists, there has been bubbling away this campaign led by the Waspi women. So Women Against State Pension Inequality. And this is women who were born in the 50s, but saw their state pension age increase so it was equalised with men. And lots of them feel like they lost out as a result for various reasons.
Yeah, and the whole thing strikes a chord with a couple of other issues that have made news in just the last couple of months, and they fall into a category that you could sort of loosely describe as generation-long state failure, which then comes with a massive bill for whichever government decides it's going to try and deal with it. So we've seen the row about the post office, we've seen the row about infected blood, and now we see this, with a report today saying that this generation of women were never told properly what was going on, which left many finding out very late in the day that suddenly they wouldn't be getting the state pension they thought they were going to be getting until much further down the track. And yet what we've had today in response to this report from an ombudsman who cannot mandate anything is the Conservatives in government and Labour soon hoping to be in government, both committing to diddly squat. They are not saying that they will compensate. Why? Well, that's for them to answer, but the context is one where the bill would be huge and the public finances are squeezed.
Well, we can chew over this now because we're joined by Angela Madden, who's one of the leaders of the campaign. Hello.
Hello.
Has this been a big day for you?
Big day, yes. We've been waiting for it for a long time.
Okay. And Lily Russell-Jones is the senior money reporter at the Times newspaper. Hi, Lily.
Hello.
Are we talking about big numbers here? Give us some numbers.
So there are about 3.6 million women born in the 1950s who are thought to be in the first kind of cohort affected by the changes to state pension age. The government the Ombudsman said that the cost of compensating all those women would be somewhere between 3.5 billion and 10 billion pounds. So that would certainly be quite a big compensation scheme. I mean, it could be bigger depending on how much compensation it's decided that the women are owed, or there might be nothing at all.
Angela, what's your reaction to what this ombudsman found out? I mean, I have to admit, I don't really know what the parliamentary ombudsman, what they actually do all the time. But they are a legitimate body and they have produced a huge, big report today that is the product of 5 years of investigation.
5 years of investigation. They took evidence from Waspi Women, from the Department of Work and Pensions, from other campaign groups as well as the Waspi campaign, and from the all-party parliamentary group in Parliament working on behalf of women born in the 1950s. 3 years ago, they found that the Department of Work and Pensions got it wrong. They should have communicated with us quicker than they did. And that was agreed to be maladministration.
And it was as simple as sending a letter to your home to say you're affected by this change.
Yes, it was that simple. They didn't do that for 14 years following the 1995 Pension Act. So we could have had 14 years more notice of the change to our state pension age than we actually received.
What would you have done differently? Not to pry into your finances. But
I wouldn't have given up a full-time job to care for my then ailing mother. That would have been the main thing that I would have done differently. I perhaps would have shared that caring responsibility and worked part-time. But I wasn't given that choice. The choice was taken away from me because I knew I could manage until my 60th birthday. But what I didn't know until 2012 was I wasn't going to get my pension on my 60th birthday in 2014. It wasn't going to arrive until March 2020.
I wonder, Angela, if today is a day that leaves you with hope and a spring in your step, or a sense of hopelessness, because we've got an ombudsman who has been very clear in her conclusions, and yet you have the party of government and the party that soon aspires to be in government promising nothing.
Exactly. But it is, we do have hope. We have hundreds of supportive MPs in Parliament. And what we are now hoping for is a debate in Parliament. Parliament actually makes the decision about what should happen to Waspi women, not just the government of the day.
But in the end, you've got to persuade a government, haven't you?
Yes. And I think Parliament can do that through debate. The Department of Work and Pensions got this wrong. The government know they got it wrong. They have changed the law so that there will never again be a 6-year pension hike put on 1 decade. There is only going to be ever a single year per decade increase to the state pension
order,
age.
I guess, isn't it? Closing with the old horse running round.
That's right. So they've closed the stable door for future generations, and I think that's good. But they still have to resolve this issue.
And Lily, have you been speaking to lots of other people who've been going through what Angela did?
Yes, I think today it's been mixed reactions really from Waspi women who are affected by the changes, because I think some feel that, they're still waiting for a resolution to what has been sort of a decades-long struggle. I've spoken to one woman who gave up a job because she thought her state pension age was 63, but actually it was 66, and she gave up work similarly to you to look after an elderly parent, and she reduced her working hours, and it meant that while she waited for the state pension, she thinks that she spent about £40,000 from her pension savings filling in that gap. And I think that she's really characteristic of a lot of women's experiences who say that they weren't told and suffered financial hardship as a result.
I wonder how, Angela, on the kind of deserving-ometer, if you like, of compensation, when you have, as I was mentioning, the sub-postmasters seeking compensation, and there's a process ongoing with that. There's the infected blood scandal. You and your campaign are seeking compensation that would add up to the billions, maybe the tens of billions, at a time when the public finances are squeezed and where political parties are blinking at the prospect of handing over money. How do you get to that next stage of convincing them? Because they're not convinced yet.
Not all of them, but several of them actually are. I mean, before Jeremy Hunt took 2p off national insurance in the recent budget, there was a surplus of 79 billion in the National Insurance Fund. Tomorrow, they could use 36 billion of that surplus to repay Waspi women and close this down forever.
It's a vast amount of money, though, isn't it?
It is a vast amount of money, but they've also saved a vast amount of money by increasing the state pension age. They've saved 181 billion. So they've used us as a cash cow for long enough. And I think because they chose not to give us the opportunity to manage our own finances by not telling us, they have a responsibility to compensate us for that. And they need to consider it. They need to discuss it. They need to think about what happens to trust between society and government if they don't recompense us properly. Because all our sons and daughters are watching this. All the NI payers of today are thinking, well, will there ever be a state pension for me? Why am I even paying this tax? What am I going to get out of it?
And they might have to pay a bit more tax to pay your compensation.
I'm sure they do. I'm also a taxpayer. I have rights as well. And I would prefer my tax to be paying my compensation than perhaps some of the other things the government choose to do with that fund.
Lily, I just wonder if the way this goes, if Labour and the Tories are kind of on the same page, just sort of hoping it goes away and not making any commitments, actually is the real division that might emerge between older voters and younger voters about who deserves to be compensated here and who should be paying for it. Because I just think a young person who can't get on the housing ladder thinking, I'm going to have to pay a bit more tax to compensate some people who maybe have quite nice houses already.
Yeah.
To caricature it.
I mean, I think that there's a legitimate argument here, which I hope most people would be sympathetic with, from the women who say they really didn't know. I think there's a question of whether it's all women who were born in the 1950s who get compensation, or whether it's restricted to a smaller group who can prove that because they weren't informed with good notice, they therefore took decisions which were detrimental to them financially. So I think there probably is a debate to be had, which we might see in Parliament, between, those who think, yes, this should be like a flat rate of compensation for everyone. Only certain people should get it. We could see quite a restrictive scheme that only allows certain people to be compensated. And then there's also this question of how much they should get. In terms of intergenerational inequality,
I'm not trying to create a fight between you two, just to be clear.
I think that, you want to see politicians correct injustices and correct wrongs that government departments have made. And if the Ombudsman says that an injustice has occurred, then I think that that's quite compelling evidence that these people are owed compensation.
I don't think there is an intergenerational divide on this. We talk to and listen to an awful lot of people, and we do have one slogan, and that is #everyone knows a Waspi woman. I have nieces, nephews, they're all paying tax. They all know what we've been through and they sympathise. And they, if they were asked what the government would prefer to do with their taxes, would say, well, get this sorted out. We are all absolutely appalled by the neglect of this government. You mentioned the Horizon issues. You mentioned the contaminated blood issues. These are all mistakes the governments have made and keeps on making. Now, when is this going to end?
Well, Angela, thanks for coming in.
You're very welcome. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
And Lily, great to see you too.
Thanks for having us.